Palworld is a game that I was originally skeptical about, even after it sold its first 1 million copies in a very short amount of time. Then it sold 2 million, and then it sold 3 million. So I decided I had to join in on the fun and see what the game was all about. I named my world, turned the multiplayer on, set my difficulty to normal, and started my game. I was greeted with a fairly detailed character creation screen, which I dabbled in until I was happy. I spawned in and slowly began to make my way towards the starting area, where I was greeted with this view. For the first while, I followed the tutorial, crafting my first primitive workbench and capturing my very first PAL. I farmed until I had enough resources to build a PAL box, the core of my base, which I put next to the starting area. I then caught the other 2 starter PALs, which were Chickpea and Cativa, so I could fill up my PAL box and get some PALs working in my base. I also made what would end up being a very temporary home. I continued with the tutorial, building things like PAL beds, the feed box, and the berry plantation, all so I could upgrade my base and have more PALs working in it. As time went on, I continued to upgrade my base and capture more and more PALs, including Foxparks, Penguellet, Gumos, and Cremis. I also made myself some better equipment, such as a hatchet, a pickaxe, and a bow. I also experienced one of my first raids, which, while scary, wasn't anything I couldn't handle. It was right about this time that I caught Eikthyrdr, a PAL that I would find most useful later on. I continued exploring the map and capturing new PALs, as well as capturing multiples of the same PAL, since capturing 10 of the same PALs gives you bonus XP. This would help me level up faster. Since the only thing left to do in the tutorial was to challenge the boss at the Syndicate Tower, I decided to give it a go, thinking that I was ready. But I quickly realized that neither me nor my PALs did enough damage to the boss, and I ended up losing pretty quickly. I guess I would have to try again when I was much stronger. In the meantime, I upgraded my base by adding things like the primitive furnace, which I could use to make ingots, and also by introducing PALs to the base that were better suited for different types of jobs. I then made a saddle for one of my PALs, which would greatly help me traverse the map, and it also allowed me to control their attacks. I continued exploring the map until I came across my first dungeon, which I decided to take on. I caught some new types of PALs and came across a level 10 Depresso boss, which I accidentally killed. After returning home, I upgraded to the crossbow from the 3-shot bow since it was just more powerful. I then farmed until I had enough resources to craft a Nightwing saddle, which would allow me to ride my Nightwing and quickly increase and decrease in elevation. I then decided to take on a level 33 Mammorest, even though I was severely underleveled. I managed to catch it, but unfortunately it wouldn't be of much use to me until I got higher than its level. I continued exploring the map and came across the small settlement, where I could buy things from merchants if I needed to. I then completed another dungeon and captured a level 12 Cativa boss. I did the same thing with a level 15 Pen King. Once home, I built an egg incubator so I could spawn PALs from any eggs I found on my travels. I proceeded to do some more dungeons and capture some more boss PALs, like this level 23 Catris, and this level 23 King Paka. Feeling much more powerful and confident now, I decided to head back to the tutorial boss, and this time, I won. With the tutorial finally over, I decided to completely move my base location to a flatter area where everything would be much more organized. Now this obviously took some time, but I was happy with the result. Once the base was complete, I came across a shiny Lamball, which I was able to capture. I even found another shiny Lamball, but unfortunately I accidentally killed this one by going too close to my own base. I also went out of my way and caught a bunch of Foxparks so I could try and condense them and make one very strong Foxpark. But admittedly, I probably should have done this once I had caught either a boss or a shiny Foxpark to make it as strong as possible. While I was busy capturing new PALs, as well as taking on bosses and even upgrading my own equipment, something on my to-do list was to build a farm base. Particularly one with lots of coal and ore so that I wouldn't have to farm it as much myself. So that's exactly what I did. And although this was just a secondary base, it would prove very, very useful. Before I knew it, I found myself upgrading my base to level 15, and with the default in-game settings, 15 pals is the max number of pals you can have in your base. In an attempt to level up faster, I began hunting for 10 of the same pal for each and every pal. At least, the ones that were easy to capture for the moment. To prepare me for stronger pals later on, I made myself a double-barrel shotgun. It was around this point when I made the genius decision to leave my PC on for an hour or so that my pals could farm ore while I went AFK. This was a bad decision, and even though I don't have the footage since I was AFK, my base got very much destroyed and a lot of my pals were injured and some were even incapacitated when I returned. This was very annoying, and I didn't want it to happen again, so I decided to capture some super strong pals. Some boss pals to be exact. How did I do this? Well, with a little help from a glitch. Even though this glitch is probably going to have been patched by the time this video releases, I'm going to tell you how I did it anyway. You started off by spawning in the Dune Shelter fast travel location in the sandy, hot region of the map. There, you attacked a guard and then fast travel back to whichever boss you wanted to capture. You attack the guards again once you fast travel to that location, and then you enter the boss room without attacking the boss yourself. It's important to make sure that your pals don't attack the boss either. When the boss goes into the corner of the room and begins to stand still, that's when you throw your pal sphere. After capturing all of the trainer boss pals, my base was much more secure. So, now I just had to farm, and I found a faster way of doing that was using another glitch. This glitch allowed me to duplicate items so that I didn't have to farm as much. And while this glitch was a little bit tricksy, it did pay off in the end. I then decided to get rid of my last base and build it here instead, since this was just a big open flat area, which I quite liked. And also, in addition to building the base itself, some other things I did included making an assault rifle, some legendary spheres, and also a breeding farm. In the breeding farm, I assigned dig toys and mammo rest until I could make Anubis. This was done simply because it would allow me to craft things much faster. I then managed to get my capture power to the max with all of my Liftmonk effigies. This would help capturing stronger pals. As soon as I had upgraded my Liftmonk effigies to the max, I saw this on Reddit. This post explained that increasing your capture rate by using Liftmonk effigies actually decreased the chance that you had to capture pals. This was very bad for me since mine was the max, and this meant that my capture rate was as low as it could possibly be, and it had been the entire time I had been leveling up my Liftmonk effigies. My original plan was to just capture 10 of every single pal, but now that I would have to use more pal spheres than I actually needed to, I decided to switch strategies. I simply just farmed so that when the bug was fixed, I would be able to capture all of the pals I needed to without making any more spheres. I also ran into another bug. While I mainly stuck to farming, I did also try my hand in a bit of breeding. I decided I wanted to make the strongest possible Penguellet because I saw that they could one-shot bosses, and who doesn't want to one-shot bosses? So I caught about 100 Penguellets so I could condense them later on and increase their rank, but I also needed the strongest base Penguellet. And for that, I would need Jetragon. I needed Jetragon because they're one of the few pals that have the trait Legend, which basically just makes my pal better. And in order to pass on that trait to the child, I needed the parent, which was Jetragon. Luckily for me, there was an easy way to capture it. All you had to do was lure Jetragon off a cliff which was very close to his spawn. If you fell in the right place, he would have a very small amount of HP left, and then it would only be a matter of time before you would be able to capture it. Then came the waiting game. You see, breeding is a complicated thing. You need two parents with the ideal traits to give you the ideal traits for a child. In my base, I had a level 8 Yormantide with the Legend trait, and a level 45 Yormantide with the Lord of the Sea trait. I wanted both of these on my Penguellet, along with Ferocious and Burly Body. All of this put together means that the Penguellet would survive the RPG shot, and also they would do a bunch of damage. But you can't just go from Yormantide straight to Penguellet. You first have to make a Mozzarina, and then a Dazi, and then you get a Penguellet afterwards. This meant I had to do a lot of incubating eggs, and some of them took a long time to complete. I just had to hope that the RNG gods would be on my side. It took about 15 hours and over 200 eggs, But eventually, I managed to get the pen gullet that I was looking for. I then fully condensed it as much as I could, and I almost fully maxed out its stats as well. Now all I had to do was upgrade it to level 50. I would do this simply by going back to capturing more pals, since the Liftmonk effigy bug had now been fixed. While trying to max out my pen gullet, I myself reached level 50. But to my surprise, I didn't get a Steam achievement for this, and my goal for this video, even though I may not have said it, was to 100% the game on Steam. So, naturally, I checked the Steam achievements to see what there was left to do, and to my surprise, all I had to do was beat the bosses, and even though I did capture them all before using the bug, I guess it didn't count because I bugged it. So, all I had to do now was do it properly, without using bugs, and I would beat the game. First, I defeated Axel and Orsek, and then Lily and Liline. Neither of these bosses were too difficult, since I was quite over-leveled. Then came Marcus and Phaleris, which was a little bit harder, and I actually ended up dying once before I managed to beat them. I then tried to fight the final boss, which was Victor in Shadowbeak, but this boss was much more difficult than the others, and I would need to change something about my loadout before I would be able to beat it. I decided to make a memory wiping medicine. Now this took a lot of time to farm and it took even longer to actually craft, but I think it was going to be worth it. This memory wiping medicine would allow me to completely respec my character, meaning I can take all of my points that I put into weight and put them into attack instead. This would help me do more damage against Shadowbeak and Victor. I used it on myself and spent 34 of my points on my attack and 15 of my points on health. Now I would be doing 68% more damage than I was before. This was where I went horribly wrong. I accidentally gave myself much less health than I had before, and that made this fight even harder. I attempted to defeat Victor in Shadowbeak about 5 more times, but it didn't go very well, and I lost every time. Now that might not sound like many attempts, but every single time I tried, I used about 30 rockets and about 200 AR ammo, and that was costly to get back, especially because now I don't have many points in weight, meaning it takes much longer to farm resources. At this point I had played the game for about 100 hours, and I only had one more achievement to complete, but it suddenly started to feel more like a chore than something I actually enjoyed. So, I simply stopped. I know that this is probably anticlimactic and not what you were expecting, but I think that if you're not having fun playing a video game, there's no reason you should finish it just for the sake of finishing it. The worst case scenario is that you won't come back to it and you've already had your fun, and the best case scenario is that you pick it up later on. But this realization that I wasn't enjoying the game anymore was an honest end to my sub 100 hours spent in Palworld. I very much enjoyed the game, I got a lot of enjoyment out of it, and I think it was very good, but it was time for me to stop playing. So with that, thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. That is going to be it for this video. If you liked it, leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Farewell.